I think we had a very, very interesting session just prior talking about the digital transformation that is happening. And I have a very eminent panelist and peer group sitting here where we are going to deep dive into the digital transformation from the ethical point of view, because there's so much happening. And we are all at the verge where things can go in a very, very different direction for the communications. And it's very interesting space to be in. We all have seen that. I think post-COVID specifically, the digital transformation has been immense. Traditional media is kind of dying, it's very limited. Our communication strategies are changing. People in our companies are understanding the importance of where we are and who we are. Like Pradeep mentioned in a previous panel, a lot of us are getting the both seats now. So this is a very, very exciting time for us, but it is also a time, very pivotal time, where we have a lot of question marks on what communication is in today's time and age, what it really means, because it's not the same press releases via fax or via Twitter anymore. It's much more and beyond that. And I think that's what we will deep dive into with the panelists here. And I would like to start with Prasidha. Prasidha, digital transformation is immense, especially when it comes to B2C, right? It's right on the face for the customer. It's right you can directly have an interaction with them. You can directly talk and have a conversation with them and engage with them. How important do you think personalization is in this day and age? And how do you ethically manage that personalization or the personalization messaging that is going?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, and thank you Exchange for Media for inviting all of us here. I think that's a very pertinent question, and if you really look at it and step back on the whole digital transformation and how we've moved from traditional media to more digital mediums where we keep in mind who our target audience is, customize our messages, time it, make it relevant. With all of that, I think the whole personalization aspect is a step forward. And what is going to be most interesting when it comes to personalization is how do you ensure that you stay authentic, you reach out to the right person, but also keep in mind what is the expectation of the user. How do you sort of address the customer inertia? How do you sort of engage them enough so that there is some sort of an action from their end which will help you sort of move forward and achieve your goals? Personalization, I feel, has to come with a lot of responsibility as well. I think one of the things that we communications professionals deal with when we work on strategies is how do you ensure that you remove that assumption and bias? And that's very important even when it comes to personalization. Not every 40-year-old or 36-year-old is thinking about egg freezing. Not everybody who just put up a marriage post is ready to get pregnant. Not everybody who looked up something on hair solutions is going to go get a PRP treatment. So I feel like having that understanding also of the audience, what they want, keeping the whole bias in place and ensuring that personalization is done in a manner that you remember that you're promoting something which is in the right spirit for the society in general. Is going to be super important. I think some consumer brands have done an interesting job of it. I was actually seeing this ad where a lot of apparel brands, especially on Instagram, would be like, oh, maybe this is the kind of clothes you'd like, which is great. But saying that, oh, if you have an hourglass figure, explore this. That's personalization, but then you have to also keep in mind that that's not in the best interest of the audience and the sentiment that you're promoting. When there's already like so much of requirement of body positivity. So yeah, that would
basically
be my take.
The messaging is ensured that the privacy is maintained, is ethically, morally, let's just say, is correct, which I think again comes into hands of the communications team, right? And Joyshree, how about in a B2B segment, how do you think that you cater to the personalization when it comes to and being ethical about it, right? You're still not in the eye, but that doesn't mean that ethically you don't have to be sure of what you're really saying.
So at present I'm with B2B, but earlier from last 16 years I was with B2C, that's into healthcare. So if I talk about ethics and proper communication and exact communication being in healthcare is very much necessary, because you can't randomly say anything. You can't randomly write anything on a press release. You need to be properly have the consent of the patient to send out the name of the patient, and that confidentiality is very much important if you are in healthcare. And healthcare is a platform where nobody will come to you and say that angioplasty and all those things, right? So that communication part need to be very much correct. And in that sense, yes, we handle lots of crises, and that communication part we used to handle it. I'm sure the team is handling at this point of time also. So very much cautiously, and that to the point thing to need to be there. And I still remember we used to write the patient is stable but critical. So I used to think, what does it mean? It is nothing, but we used to always write the patient is critical but stable. So that at certain point of time what I'll not say it's a manipulation or something like that, but that diplomacy needs to be there, and that balance to keep that situation in under complete balance, and that's need
not
to be there.
Not to create panic. Yeah. I think very interesting industry that Himank is in, which is always under there's so much of scrutiny, right, when it comes to the gaming industry. It's one of the most booming industry currently. What are the ethical considerations, Himank, that you have to keep in mind when you are building your digital transformation strategy, and your brand is digital too? It's a digital first. It's a company which is or let's say this is an industry which is built on digital format. So how do you navigate that? Because you are always under the eye of storm and legal complications for, the industry, not per se the Baazi, but the industry. So how do you manage that, and what are the considerations you need to keep in mind?
Ye to jua hai. That's the first thing I heard it when I met a bunch of media folks representing my organization as a spokesperson. That's the first thing you said, coming from media. So I can completely agree to what you're trying to say. And I think there are a bunch of things that we need to address it. What I felt, not just Baazi Games or any other organization, without ethics, I think it won't survive even a bit, first of all.
Yeah.
So, and more than that, you need to, if you try to become number one, attain the leadership position, which Baazi has. Right. Let's say Poker Baazi leads poker, skill-based gaming. Now, it can only happen when you follow a set of code when it comes to ethics. Yeah. Like, for instance, I don't know if you guys have tried to play the app. When you go to my app, which is Poker Baazi, and try to play a game, after a point, do you know what happens? There is a break. For 15 minutes, all the tables will be shut. Nobody can play anything. You may be having the best of the hands, or you having that vibe or the moment that I'm going to win or losing. We don't care. We know what's right.
Right.
Now, for an online gaming company, and again, when it's parts of a real money gaming, RMG industry, every minute counts. And we do that, and we do take that break every 15 minutes. Like every hour or two, we take a 15-minute break. So imagine the kind of loss and revenue or profit we lose, but we don't lose on ethics. And maybe that's why we feel that we have a set of loyalists. I was having a conversation with someone, and the person mentioned that, hey, I think we were having a conversation where we said that, how are you going to address the idea of data leakage? Because I'm sharing my financial detail over there. And I was explaining her that that's what makes us different. You need to be very ethically driven. You need to be very transparent. And I'm not talking about just myself. I'm talking about industry players also. Like recently I was looking at MPL. You know what they have done? They have posted their 6 certificates that they have received talking about data privacy. And or random generator, we generate the numbers and everything. Yeah. It's certified by 6 different third-party organizations. I think that transparency will help us to attain that kind of ethics we have. Last but not the least, in the field of sports or gaming industry, I truly believe if you don't have set rules to follow for yourself, you don't go crazy in terms of being really greedy for money, I think that is very, very important for us. And as an organization, we don't believe that. We are profitable, that's very happy for us. That's very happy state for us. But more than that, we have around 3.5 million users, which is nothing compared to, say, brands like Dream 11. They claim like a billion number, 100 million, I don't know what not they claim it. But the idea is that 3.5 billion user base swear by in terms of what policies we follow, the kind of responsible gaming we stand for it. And I think if you look at that balance out per se, where we are losing revenue and profit, 15-minute break, you can't play anything. You try DM over my social media page, say that, hey, I'm losing money, I'm going to commit suicide. We're going to give you counsel, free of cost. We're going to arrange a psychotherapist to come in and help you. And we're going to block you. Irrespective, you are a money maker for me. I don't care. I'm going to follow that ethic and that rule to ensure that we do it. So what happens, we are losing our revenue profit, but we are gaining a lot of loyalists. And even the government looks up to us. You know, the whole AIGF federation that we have, we are the main members who are actually taking that thing forward. So yeah, I hope I answered the question.
It's very interesting, Himank. In fact, I would like to just add on, or rather ask you another question, because you said how Dream 11 or let's say some of the competitors have billions sort of users. So do you think sometimes ethics stops you from growing to a point where your other competitors possibly are not as ethical or perhaps a little less ethical? I mean, is there a way that can be balanced at some point?
Ethics will never stop you. It will help you grow. It's impossible that way.
Sure.
Ethic basically, जो सही है, आप वही कीजिए. That's what it is about.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need to be transparent. You need to go above in terms of a money maker tag.
Yeah.
And set benchmarks for the industry. Look, I'll keep it very simple. As an organization, I'm trying to pivot. The whole idea of online gaming, I'm trying to change it. The idea is to establish as a sport. You know, none of my events or tournaments that we don't talk about money as a priority.
Right.
It's the medal that you're going to bring into India, the proud feeling that you have, your parents and everything, breaking the taboo. We do that. So I genuinely feel that if you don't have ethics, if you don't have, you know, what is right and we will stand for it, I think you'll not survive.
That's true.
You'll have a lot of conflicts externally as well as internally.
That's true.
If
Sure.
I may just add one point to what Himank is saying, I feel like, you know, sometimes to your question on ethics versus growth, of course, fully agree that being ethical will in no way undermine or limit your growth abilities. But I do sometimes feel that, you know, there are companies who would in the short term grow more because they are just like growth at all costs. I'll do whatever the hell. I would not follow regulatory guidance. Seen some, work with few. And then it reaches a point where, you know that there's no way to move beyond this point because now everyone's eyes are on you, and then the speed at which you go there, you come down at a faster sort of a
Absolutely.
speed. So I feel like, you know, all in for, you know, growing ethically, not growing at all costs, keeping again in mind, like, you know, serving the person on the other side, that's the customer, stakeholder, investor, whoever that is.
Yeah.
So
I would like to add
Yeah,
here
yeah, sure,
one more point. As a PR agency, we work with a lot of young startup founders, you know, and mostly creating some kind of disruption, you know, and these are at the intersection of, you know, growth, making money, and at the same time, they are sort of battling some legalities, you know. I see a lot of founders who send us, you know, information, and they would like very forward-looking, you know, press releases to be churned out, but we as a PR firm, we always advise them to tone it down and, you know, keep it in compliant with, you know, regulatory bodies and things like that. And we don't want anything that is, you know, that is going to bring problems to them later on. So I think it's very important to be ethical even as when you are disseminating press releases.
No, absolutely. I think we all believe in it, but there are organizations that are not ethical, and I think it is important to have those case studies to discuss and say how are we different, how are we making an ethical organization which has a very long-term vision around. And I think my next question, Rahul, would be to you from here. What are the what role do regulatory compliance and say industry standards play in shaping the ethical landscape, right? Because we are always in this questioning, especially a lot of startups are, right? And I'm sure you work with a lot of them, and I would want to ask the same question to Madhukar too. How do you think the regulatory compliance can work with the industry to ensure that the compliances are met? And what are the steps that are happening currently? What is it? Would you like to share and put some perspective to it?
So I'll just take a step back. When we are talking, this is about digital transformation. Pradeep just mentioned 6 steps and all. So when I look at communications, marketing communications and all, I see it as, especially in high-risk areas, as a risk management strategy. There is a lot of uncertainty, both with respect to progress and what may happen. There is a certain roadmap, there is inexistence of a roadmap, and there could be complete change. So as communications people, there has to be an internal process system in place to execute and work out things strategically. There has to be internal processes and systems in place, and when you are talking about startups, there is this, I have talked about it, ESG that we talk about. For them also, they have to see, since they are very technology oriented, it has to be ESTG. They have to understand the dynamics of risk and see how they would manage various risks and develop their strategy accordingly. The communication is an exemplification or a communication of what you do in the strategy part of it. So it's not specific, but startups per se, it's not very relevant, but there are digital transformation as such is a very wide domain. And legal, I can go down to their various scenarios that are emerging. Data privacy is a very sensitive subject. Companies have been very liberal as to, one, the content that they use externally, and the data that they use. Companies actually, business models are based on selling data. They might have been doing whatever, but once the DPDP comes in, half of them, especially the startups, may have lost their business streams or the whole business models. So they have to justify. Communications will have to roll and endorse their credibility, find what is the credible aspect of it. There is another aspect is, as all communications people, what we all don't realize is there is a concept of, and I'm talking now as a lawyer more like, basically there is a concept of consent and data storage. And I don't think everybody has media lists. How many of you have consent from the journalist to store their data? Everybody will need it. We implemented a GDPR in 2017 in my previous company. It was a very painful exercise. And how many of you will actually get an approval from journalists, from clients, from people to store that data? So, and in our case, as professional services, the comms were given the responsibility. So maybe because as a horizontal, it's maybe the tech or the comms will have to take the responsibility to handle all those aspects. So this is.
Madhukar, please.
Yeah. So I would like to take a very good example of how SEBI has regulated, for public listed companies, whenever you're disseminating information or communication to the public. I mean, if you look at any public listed companies, whenever there is a press release, that has to first go to the exchange, and you cannot have, a very forward-looking statements, and you need to sort of talk about all the, details in great details. Similarly, if we look at startup ecosystem, you have, they are mostly operating in disruptive industries where probably regulations are not there. But as I feel, if you look at European country where GDPR is in place, even when you're writing a press release, you have to know that, okay, whose data you have and what kind of communication you can disseminate to them, and whether the communication is authentic or not. So similarly, if we look at various industries, so we work with NFTs, cryptocurrencies, gaming. We educate our clients on a regular basis that, okay, this is right or this is not right, and how your press releases should be, drafted, and how it should be communicated so that you are not in the soup later on.
I think a very interesting aspect when we are talking about the ethics is a paid amplification, right? We are using a lot of creators and influencers and bloggers. There is also a pressure as a communicator to ensure there is a particular kind of content that goes out, a particular kind of messaging that goes out. So we cannot just dissuade ourselves from for who we stand, right, and what needs to be done. And there is a lot of ethical issues that are coming in. Of course, there are certain standards that are being built now for the creators to ensure that they are following that. But let's talk about some of the interesting ethical dilemmas that you guys have faced while doing paid collaborations, paid amplifications, because there is also a certain question mark of what is communication, advertising, marketing, because it's kind of a mixture of all that, right? So would love to, maybe Himank, you can start with some interesting
So one of my organizations where I was part of it, we tried to have some paid partnership because somehow the whole management was convinced that there are certain things in terms of messages that cannot be achieved organically.
Right.
Specific words, specific hashtags. Let's do partnership. I said, okay, fine, let's go ahead. But that happened without me being in loop. Say a marketing management or senior person was driving it. And the brief was given, and the article was created, the content that was created, and I was amazed by that thing, because as a marketing person, we always wanted to do something which is on your face. Chhap do har jagah. Dikhna chahiye, yahan wahan jump kar do. And my challenge is, I'm talking about one of the best, publication that I can look up to, like something that, is a benchmark. And part of their marketing team shared something that is contrasting, that is unacceptable in terms of the way it's been written. You're actually pivoting the way you always stand for. And they had no problem. Fortunately, that thing did not happen. And I had to spend a lot of time to sensitize internally that it's not about that you need to put everything on your face. Let's embrace the idea of subtle art of branding. I love the idea of subtle art of branding. You hit the subconscious mind. And then I also question that publication that you stand for A, B, C, and whatever you've written is completely against that. That should not be the case. And I was pressurized, basis the relationship and, the CEO and others, not to get into it. But that's not right. You hired me for the communication. I'm going to stand for what is right. And what's the point of having someone who has more than 2 decades of experience over the new system if you have to just,
Totally.
sometimes process and just overseeing doesn't make, use common sense. Stand for what is right. It makes sense that way, right? So yeah, this is one terrible experience I had. Of course, there are many.
Yeah, Joyce.
That's fine. So personally, if I'll talk about my industry, or personally, if it's my opinion, I really don't like this influencer kind of a thing, at least for my industry, because the industry to whom I belong is something like, ye sab nahi chalega, there is something which is more often other things driven, I'll not say it's more often print media or other things, but I believe for my industry that traditional PR still works on a larger note rather than this paid your freelancing, or not freelancing, but this paid platforms that does, at certain point of time it does work, but not on a bigger scale. It's gonna work in near future also, I can 100% say, because people are not gonna take risk on paid platforms to advise you on your health. Yeah. So that's why I think, I in my personal opinion, I generally don't buy this paid platforms.
Yeah, I'll just add one bit. I'm not saying that you should not reach out to such paid association or have an influencer engagement. If you see that some person is certified health expert, then seeking out for that help is absolutely right, because that way you can mitigate a lot of fake news and fake information that haldi lagao to dunya chal jayegi tumhari.
Absolutely.
Roz khaoge 250 saal jiyoge. All those things can be
Yes,
created,
that
and
can be
also
considered.
you understand what they're looking for. So for example, and I have no problem sharing that name. One of the publications that we have that we try to associate with them is Men's XP. Logan in naam suna, it's a lifestyle publication, people talk about it. So we reached out to them for a partnership because we wanted certain things to be done which we feel organically doesn't make sense. And they have their audience, they have a niche, they have a subculture, it suits to what we are trying to do. And interestingly, the organization and what we're doing, we came up to something which makes sense, so much so that they refuse to take money from us. They said, you believe in subtle art of branding. What you're sharing, it meets the kind of target audience, what you're looking for on my platform. You're actually fulfilling that void. We always wanted to have it. So we were not going to charge you money. We'll treat you like a partner. Let's keep it in a very organic and simple way so that your purpose is solved. I will not feel that I'm cheating my audience in terms of showing something which is paid. So basis that, I think it works.
Sure. No, it does.
You
but
need
here we are talking
some checks
more
and balances
on the,
and you're sorted.
Yeah, the more the ethical element of the paid collaboration. Prasidha, perhaps, I'm sure you work with a lot of influencers in your space, and it's not easy, right, to navigate, because I know we work in B2C. We have to be, we also want a certain messaging going out. We also want a certain, but we also want it to be subtle, like how Himank said. We don't want this to be on the face, or at least appear to be paid, but it is paid. so there is a fine balance that we all have to maintain. So what are the kind of dilemmas that you had gone through sometimes, right? Like pushing them subtly to do what you want them to.
And if Prasidha says it, it means a lot, because I look up to her as a comms person.
Yeah.
Her journey is quite fascinating. I've been following her from your days of OYO and all. So I'm also very curious to know, because she's part of some really reputed organizations and your work is amazing. So yeah, I'm also very curious.
Kind of you, Himank, and no pressure, Prasidha, reminding myself. I mean, there are multiple dilemmas. I'll go to Himank's example, you know, especially when you do paid placement of articles. I've worked with a certain individual at an executive leadership team who would say every time a publication writes something terrible, agle din wahan pe ek achhi article chhapwa do. So basically pay them and put it out. And I'd be like, oh my God, okay, and how do I talk him out of this? So it was interesting babysitting experience. But beyond that, I think, you know, coming to influencers, I feel like that's the most challenging piece, because you want them to be very authentic in what they say. And I feel like today's audiences, especially like for brands that I've been associated with, or most of the consumer brands, we're all talking about Gen Zs and millennials. Like, they're spending so much time, they can see through it. Whether or not an influencer puts that tag saying sponsored, hosted, paid, or not, the way they are saying something, you know it for sure that this is paid post, because you know, that's just very obvious. They're using the brand language, means this is not authentic. So I think, you know, striking that balance is very, very hard. You are, you know, for instance, getting into a barter deal and saying, okay, I'll just take care of the cost of the stay. You go there, do your thing, experience whatever, and put up a post. Now, if you really believe in your product and service, then you will take the risk of saying, okay, I'm not going to give you any guidance in terms of what to say. That's your deal, right? I'm just paying for the place and asking you to go and choose my property or choose my listing or hotel or, you know, whatever that service is, and talk about it. I feel like that is the sort of balance we've tried to strike. It's a work in progress. It works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you do reach a situation where, you know, it's not a paid deal, it's a barter deal. You get them to go experience something, they don't have a good experience, and then they talk about it and you're like, oh my God, I paid for that stay and still this happened. So, you know, it is very hard. And I think the other challenge that I often face is even with guidelines, right? Like, there are guidelines which are global. So sometimes you want them to, as a global company, you want the influencers to follow global guidelines, but they're like, oh, but I'm just going to follow the guidelines for India. And then the guidelines for India are very different from the guidelines in certain other Southeast Asian markets. Somewhere you need an agreement for a barter deal. Sometimes you don't need an agreement. So it's very complicated. So I feel like the process is one part of it. The other is the intent of any sort of paid. You're doing an editorial integration with an OTT show. That's the subtle sort of branding opportunities. How do you use it in a way where you are probably solving for that one misconception or that one lack of understanding about your brand, so that, you know, when that message gets delivered, it's as relevant to you as a brand as to the person consuming that piece of content. Where we sometimes go wrong with paid is, we believe, and, you know, comes from, of course, a lot of cross-functional teams and leadership teams, that the things that you cannot organically deliver, paise use kar lo. But that's not as easy, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
think those are the dilemmas that you go through.
Yeah.
One example I would like to give, and where we had to actually let go of a business. So there was one NFT drop, that was happening, and which sort of claimed to triple your money in 1 year. And one of the young founders, started saying that we would like this press release, and they were really ready to pay us, good amount of money. And interestingly, some financial influencers also agreed to be part of the campaign. But, looking at, our old moral obligation, we thought, no, we would let it go. So this was one dilemma where we were earning money, we are going to earn money, but at the same time, I thought it was not correct thing to do. So.
I think communicators are playing a role of actually putting kind of a tab towards both the influencers as well as the brand. And I think very interestingly, Madhukar, you've brought the point of Fin influencers. I mean, they've been under a lot of soup for the kind of recommendations they are making without understanding the risk factors that are involved, and people are losing out money. And Rahul, I like to understand from you, what are the compliances that are being built, and how do you think that, again, this needs to be managed by both the creator, because it's equally their responsibility. It can't just be the brand responsibility and the brand's responsibility.
So going a little step back, when we're talking about paid, so legal professional services, for instance, and even healthcare, I've worked in that space also. So there is a demand for, there is a paid ecosystem that exists. But in this scenario, each of the lawyers, we have 170 partners, each of them are spokespeople. They are influencers in themselves. And when they go out and speak something, they are putting their reputation at stake. It is all about their reputation and expertise. So it is, as communications people, it's not that we can leave out a platform. I'm talking of a platform because I'm talking about communications at a global level. Here, lawyers across the globe are fighting for M&A transactions, PE transactions, capital market transactions across the world. So they are common platforms, paid platforms. Basically, you get an annual subscription, you write on those. Yeah. But you have to write sophisticated content which is ready and it is reflective of your credentials. So that is where a certain level of governance comes in. And communications has to ensure that necessary processes are in place. So we have, for instance, a complete chain of flow as to how the content will go, what is the review mechanisms. We write almost, 2, 3, 4 opinion articles a week, or maybe more.
Wow.
So that is the level of intensity of our communication. Plus our blogs, 2, 3 blogs, which are very long blogs every week. Right. So that is the level of output internally we do. As for everything, for instance, as a frontline law firm, as for liabilities, firstly talking about us, every word we say is actually monitored by the regulators. At times we get a call immediately the moment we say a comment, give a comment. Likewise, it applies to all other companies. If as a listed company, for instance, when I was in Max, I was in SL Group. Being listed companies, there were requirements on what you can speak, when you can speak. So those have to be kept in mind, and it applies equally to social media. And then there are the risks that have to be kept in mind. Sectoral compliances are coming in. There are regulations which are coming as to what can be put on social media. Increasing regulations are coming in. So I don't think we should get into too much of nitty-gritties there. But there are a lot of liabilities, and they are far more for listed companies and certain other categories of companies like healthcare, legal, because they have their own set of rules.
Yeah, true. Madhukar, I would like to understand from you, how can we companies ensure inclusivity and avoid perpetuating biases, especially when it comes to paid collaborations in their digital strategies? I mean, what would you recommend companies, and any examples that you can share with us, like how this was used?
I think when we are looking at having inclusivity in our brand campaigns, we need to look at, suppose if you're doing a campaign for a, say, woman-centric brand, why not involve even male, influencers who are writing in a correct way, and also if you're talking about a main brand for men, why not involve female influencers? Yeah, I think this is something that we can look at.
That you do that, right? Himank and Prasidha, I think, would love to understand, how do you ensure?
Repeat that question.
Yeah, so how do you ensure that, there is inclusivity and there is no perpetuating biases involved when you're forming your digital transformation strategy, especially when it comes to paid collaborations? So how do you ensure the biases are not there?
Let me give you a small example. So when I joined my recent organization, Baazi, and I realized that all the co-founders and the founders, they all need some kind of training in terms of connecting with media. So I said, okay, fine, I'll connect with you, I'll help you, let's have some sessions and everything. And I didn't follow the similar path. The whole idea, I spent another half an hour, 45 minutes with each of them. And by the way, my company has 7 co-founders. So I spent 45 minutes with each of them, and I didn't focus on certain do's and don'ts that we typically share. What I focus on stand for what is right for you. I've realized that the organization has a very strong foundation of being very ethically driven. What is right, we'll fight for it. If it's a revenue loss, we'll do it. If there is a great resource that we are losing in terms of ethics and everything, we are fine with that. I said, stick to that part. I can't feed you every information all the time. The media can catch you basis anything, A, B, C, or Z. As long as you stick to the core part of that, we are a very, clean company, we are transparent, we follow certain values. We don't deter on that part. I think that makes a lot of sense over there. Now, in terms of bringing everything together, I think you need to be very transparent and very connected with everyone at the ground level. वो कहावत है ना, घर का बेदी लंका ढाए. So you need to focus in-house, because I have, my organization is a very small organization. I have around 400 plus people, and we feel that's more than enough. All are rock stars. We're bringing more capabilities within the organization. If they are sorted in terms of knowing the values, they talk the same language, and they know how to play the game. The ABCs, the basics are clear. I think then it's very easy for me to have the entire stakeholder management at ease. They will not go wrong with that. So I'd never tell them, this is not the way you should be sitting. This is not what you should be wearing, But be very careful, think before you speak, and do not lose out in your values and what you stand for. Anyhow, learn by heart. Even a security guy who's outside, if you go and ask him, he will tell you, company ki values kya hain, kis liye khade hain, sir ye to hum karte hi nahi hai. So this is the kind of subconsciousness we're trying to figure it out, through which we can achieve all of it.
One example I would like to give is in terms of influencers, when we are talking, I think we have some amazing female financial influencers like C.A. Rachna Ranade, who is really doing, very, very well. So if we are talking about that kind of inclusivity, then, where, we are talking about male, female, I think, we have
ensure that the campaign's inclusive, right? Prasidha.
Yeah, I think starting from keeping aside assumptions and going into hard data and analysis, we have a wonderful ecosystem. There are just so many companies who specialize in, creating these kind of reports, giving you suggestions. So I feel like sometimes you need to reach out to the experts and you need to acknowledge that you don't know it all. And I feel like, our job as corporate communications professionals, when we get that seat on the table, is to also sensitize people that let's not assume we know it all. Like, let's work with the assumption, if there has to be an assumption, that we don't know. We need to figure things out. And let's do it jointly and work with experts to, find out what is the right approach when it comes to any sort of strategy, whether it's paid or not, whether it's campaigns or whether it's even internal decisions. With our employee base as well. I think being inclusive is just so important. Sometimes, you plan like a get-together and you just decide that, oh, okay, these were the people who were in the office, especially in times when, some of us are working from home and there are some people who show up in the office. How do you sort of be inclusive? And that has to be ingrained in the culture of the company, whether it's internal policies, activities, the way we conduct business, or whether it comes to anything that we do externally. And that sort of really brings that change.
Sure, sure. I think we're just short of 1 minute, and I would quickly like to round up. I think there should be a takeaway for all of us from this discussion, and I want you all to share your inputs, at least 2 or 3 such tech products that you're using in your communications daily, which you think has enhanced the efficiency as well as the efficacy of your communication style. So, Madhukar?
We use Meltwater.
You do use
for social listening, and also HotSuite for social media management.
Right.
So other than, we fully automated our marketing processes. It's end-to-end automated. Right from tracking, which comes through an agency, then it's a multi-layer tracking, to storage, and I am in my in my previous organizations also we've done that. So it's a complete sense. The whole idea is it is all centered around risk management, so that no process or no communication or no approvals are missed out, and everything is recorded and systematically stored for retrieval in the future as and when.
Okay, something interesting. AI, ML tools, come on. Can't be just all storage data.
Not sure whether we can get to AI ML, but I think like one of the tools that I've been enjoying a lot is this tool called Atlas. It really helps you create interesting graphs and images, and I feel like it just makes you look a little more intelligent in the room. So I think I quite like using that. I love using Asana for project management and efficiency. Evernote is my favorite. Love making notes. Just love using to-do lists and crossing things out, and that again gives me a lot of mental peace. It makes me feel like it was a productive day. And then of course the Meltwaters and the Hootsuite and Sprinkler and all.
So other than the productivity tools, we have our in-house, we have implemented AI only from using AI. One of the tools that we've implemented, which is basically for predictive analytics of judgments. It is for legal tech. But I see that is something that's going to be implemented in comms also. You can actually forecast what is, say, a journalist wanting to write, giving his past trends of writing, for analyzing that and predicting what is be of interest to him, what is going to work for them, and what is the expected output. So that is something that we've done in legal, and I see a full application here. There is various global tools also, but we got an Indian tool made. It was called Legal Mind, and there are other such tools. Then using similar data, you have various forms of data that are available. There is CRM data and other things, and other trends that you can organize, what is the kind of coverage you're getting and all, which can be used for data analytics and producing trends, which can then be fed into various teams. So those are the things that I see things are heading now.
Okay, so we're time's up. So Joyshree, Himank, quickly, please.
So officially Meltwater and HotSuite, but personally I've been using ChatGPT like anything. So writing from press release to whatnot. So these days I'm also trying to, try some other platforms similar to ChatGPT. So yeah, that's also work.
We don't have any filtration as such. We just ensure that you enjoy, experiment it, be it ChatGPT or any other tool. Please ensure when you finalize the content, you have 2 layers of check basis certain individuals. And I think that's all we follow.
Great, thank you.
Now
Ruchika, I'm sorry if I interrupted. We would like to hear your thoughts as well. Like since you're part of this panel as well, I did not get a chance to hear you out. You have been very kind in hosting us and being a fabulous moderator.
But I think we have time's up. We could, but I think we all understand where communication is standing right now, which is we are standing at a very pivotal role. All the companies we are not at the point where we have to make anyone understand what our department does, what our roles are. In fact, people are seeking communicators more than even marketers now. A lot of marketers have started to report to communicators. I mean, things are kind of shifting there. And the question today was how ethically we have to ensure the messaging is correct, because digitally it's completely changed it. And like in the previous panel, they said that we all are distributing the information directly. It's in our control and it's in our hand. And I think it's a beautiful place to be in currently, because we are kind of spearheading it. We are the leaders of it. So I think this is a space to be in. We should be very proud of where we all are, I think, as communicators. So thank you.